Before we dive into today's session, let me quickly outline the structure of our event. We will begin with a welcome speech from our association, followed by an insightful talk from our esteemed guest, Professor Dana Minbaeva. After the talk, we will open the floor for a Q&A session where you will have the opportunity to ask questions. We encourage all of you to write your questions in the chat during the presentation, and we will address them at the end of the session. As we are celebrating International Women's Day this month, it is especially meaningful to have Professor Dana Minbaeva with us today. Her remarkable journey in academia, from mining engineering to becoming a leading scholar in human capital research, is a true inspiration. She exemplifies the power of resilience, ambition, and the importance of women's leadership in academia and beyond. We are fortunate to celebrate this occasion with such a distinguished speaker. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speakers. We are honored to have Dr. Serik Mirmanov and Dr. Halmjan Sabekov, who will share their thoughts and officially kick off today's seminar. Dr. Serik, please take the stage.
Thank you, Aya. Hello, everyone. My name is Serik Mirmanov, and a very warm welcome to this honor seminar. It is a true privilege to be here today and introduce our distinguished guest, Professor Dana Minbaeva. Today, we are fortunate to have with us a truly remarkable scientist and leader. Professor Minbaeva's journey is one of the extraordinary achievement and inspiration. We all know that sometimes life's starting point isn't where we end up, and Professor Minbaeva's stories remind us of this. She began her academic journey in Kazakhstan, and through sheer determination and brilliance, she has risen to the position of significant influence in the King's College London, and one of the most prestigious university in the United Kingdom and in the world. If you read her story, especially in places like Kaspravda, you see how she is always trying to change the world for the better. This drive, this commitment to making a positive impact, sometimes we should all strive for. Her expertise in strategic human capital is not just theoretical. It is about real-world solution. It is about understanding and the complex challenges facing our planet and finding innovative ways to address them. That is why this seminar is so important. Professor Minbaeva's work a testament to power of science to drive positive change. She shows us what the passion as a dedication we can overcome obstacles and achieve remarkable things. This seminar is an incredible opportunity for you, our guests, to learn from Professor Minbaeva's vast knowledge and experience. I encourage you to actively engage into the seminar, ask questions, and embrace the opportunity to expand your intellectual horizons. We are truly honored to have Professor Minbaeva with us today. So we are looking forward for the stimulating and enriching seminar. But before that, let me handle microphone to Galamjan. He briefly introduced our association.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Almjan. Just quickly remark, we speak in English because we not only Kazakhstani community here, but also Central Asian community. Before starting, shortly about our association, Kazakh International Science Association, we've been doing for 10 years, but officially registered last year, jointly in Berlin and Tokyo. And we have now it's more than 70 members, including PhD, postdocs, professors, conducting cutting-edge research in a world-leading institution around the world. And we have really dynamic and welcoming community. It's continually growing around the world. So about our team, Dr. Serik Mirmanov, president of our association. My name is Ramjan, founder, deputy director. Aya is the secretary of the association. And we also have a board members that continuously growing. Now, currently, we only have Juan Shirgaliyev. Some of you may know. And this is excuse me. Can you hear me now? Yeah, on the left side, established scholars, starting from minister and other scholars from different countries. We invited them. They sharing. So this type of series is guest of honor seminar series. And on the right side, there's young scholars from different countries, PhD, postdocs that have been invited from different fields, also from industry as well. So we're trying to keep up with two audience, established and young scholars. As you can see here, we previously organized several events, one of them including Prime Minister, also Panjshir Ghalib, Murad Saparbayev as established scholars from France. And also we had, as I said, industry panel and panel discussion, including other postdocs from different countries. And we also have panel discussion on relevant topics that very important for Kazakhstan. So last year we invited Professor Frederik Houthoff from Netherlands to share his expertise on the flu situation in Kazakhstan, and also I have some difficulties with connection. Can you still see my slides? And yeah, and other than that, I want to mention that we have this 100 Kazakh alum project led by Juan Shirgaliyev, where he interviewing all prominent established scholars around the world and working in different positions, mainly professors. And one of them, today's speaker, Dana Minbaeva. If you're interested, please visit our website to learn more. And last one, guest of honor, we invited a friend of mine, Professor Kazuhito Shimada. He's a flight surgeon of Japanese astronauts for more than 20 years. So he shared expertise on aerospace medicine, perspectives, and sometimes time to time we organize this kind of events in order to learn new things, new field, and to show it to our audience. It was very great discussion and point. If you're interested, it's still available on our YouTube channel. And other than that, we also trying to be medium between Japanese government for PhD student scholarship, and also Takeda Science Foundation. Recently, we've been organizing for Central Asian doctors, more than 400 people registered, and this is amazing amazing fellowship opportunity to doctors to visit Japan for 1 year and have clinical training and research training in leading Japanese hospitals. So this was last year. And other than that, we trying to collaborate with other association like Kazakh Association of PhD in North America. We also have Young Researchers Alliance in Kazakhstan. And yeah, trying to be in touch with other associations, and as well as Ghalam project, which led it was non-commercial Kazakhstani project that trying to help young scientists around the world and Kazakhstan. Yeah. And last one. So I think most of you are aware that we this summer we have summer retreat program in Bavaria. So we inviting everyone, especially our members, inviting our members of our association where we can have spend time together and have a great time. Yep. Thank you very much for this. And I'm heading to Aya. Yep.
Thank you, Holmjan, for your warm welcome, and thank you, Serik, for introducing our speaker, Dr. Dana Minbaeva. It's a great excitement that we're starting our guest of honor session today. Professor Minbaeva is a professor of strategic human capital at King's Business School, King's College London, UK, and holds a part-time position at Copenhagen Business School, Denmark. She is also an affiliate faculty member at London Business School. Her academic career is nothing short of inspiring, with over 70 published articles in top-tier international peer-reviewed journals, as well as numerous book chapters and reports. She has received numerous national and international awards for her contributions to the field of human capital research, and her work continues to make a significant impact globally. We are incredibly fortunate to have her with us today to share her expertise, insights, and experience. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dana Minbaeva.
Thank you very much, Elia. Thank you so much for a very nice introduction and kind words. And first and foremost to the association, excellent idea, brilliant commitment. So very much looking forward to our future conversations and collaborations. Right, so I prepared a couple of slides that are basically, to introduce myself a little bit, but also to kick off the discussion. Just a couple of words about myself. As you said, I was born in the times of Soviet Union in Almaty in Kazakhstan. I currently live in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I've been living in Copenhagen since September 2000 when I moved here to get my to continue my PhD studies. I currently work in London, United Kingdom, King's College London, and that's something that happened right after pandemic. I've been, quite comfortable in my professor chair at Copenhagen Business School, going into my 21st year at CBS, when headhunters kind of called me, and I thought, hey, maybe to do one more uncomfortable thing before retiring. Nevertheless, so since 2021, my main employer is King's College London, but I kept indeed a 20% part-time position at CBS because I still have my PhD students here and several research projects. And yes, thank you so much for referring to my journey as something different, and it is different indeed. I graduated from the Karaganda Polytechnical Institute in 1992 with a diploma of mining engineering. It happened right after the Soviet Union collapsed, so the first industry that closed literally was mining industry, and besides at that time, all foreign direct investment was directed to Caspian Sea region, where find oil and gas. So I guess the beginning of 90s was really difficult and tough times. We can talk about it later. I also talked about it in, got a couple of interviews around that podcast as well as article. But nevertheless, ultimately, by 1994, decided that I need to do. I had a choice either to continue the existence or do something different. So I decided to do something different. I learned English and got myself into the MBA program at KIMAP. We were the third cohort graduating. That was also excellent times. And the next degree I received from Copenhagen Business School, it's a PhD in economics and business administration. Nevertheless, the thing I want to talk about today, just to kick us off, I know that in the audience we have quite a few PhD students, postdoc researchers, as well as faculty members. So I would like you to think about your own profile. So if you think about the kind of three angles of research, education, and societal impact, something despite where we are and the institutional context in which we operate, we could say more or less applicable, right? So if you think about what you do and think about, this in three dimensions as a research, education, and societal impact. You have a picture, just kind of get the triangle, right? And then try to mark where you are right now on the dimensions of research, education, and societal impact. So some of you may end up with a profile which is marked here in green, kind of doing good in terms of research, but there are possibilities of improvement, pushing societal impact, and just starting, teaching career or educational experiences. But for some of you, your profile maybe look like profile 2 marked in red in here, where you're focused and prioritizing currently societal impact, dissemination, work with practice, and you channel that into your education, be that undergraduate or graduate and perhaps postgraduate. You're an excellent teacher, and these two things take a lot of time. So somehow you wish that maybe, I would really like to put all that knowledge generated in practice into an article and submit to the top tier journal. But some of them, some of you, and some of your profiles may look like profile 3 marked in dark blue on the slide, where you prioritize research. You actually have by now already excellent publications in top-tier journals, 4-star journals, as we refer to them in the field of business and management. You have excellent research pipeline, several articles at different stage of development, some of them under revise and resubmit, some of them perhaps under the second or third round of revision, and a couple of research projects that are just pumping data in yet another research publication. But because of so much of attention and pressure on that research, perhaps your dean kind of from time to time would come and kind of knock on your door and say, hey, should we do something for practice, or can you speak at the industry event, because this dissemination and social impact matters for example, our upcoming accreditation. And because you prioritize research so much, currently you kind of just meeting the requirement of teaching, and to be honest, perhaps looking at teaching as a necessary evil, something you just have to do and couldn't wait to get out of the classroom and back to your office, perhaps close the door and run your causal models there. So I guess what I'm trying to say in here, that we are at different stages of our career. We are at different institutions with different strategies and priorities. We have our differences in our individual interests, ambitions, but overall to become, you could say, all-rounded scholar, I believe we need to continuously think about this as a tripod, as a, you could say, perhaps think about the chair with the 3 legs, or table, in 70s they were very popular, triangle tables with 3 legs, which, by the way, regarded as one of the most stable structures in design and architecture. Well, nevertheless, one thing which is very unhealthy and definitely not recommendable is to aim to score highest on all 3 dimensions. It's impossible. There are 24 hours a day. There's 365 days a year. Although I really dislike, you could say, expression work-life balance, in a sense, I guess it's something else. It's not necessarily about work-life balance. It's about priority. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to say that there is definitely other things to do in life than just research, teaching, or dissemination to practice. So, but nevertheless, think about these 3 dimensions I believe, will help you to become more stable. And you could say, you don't have to then choose between rigor or relevance, theory or practice. You're aiming at reaching, those goals that you put in front of yourself in those dimensions, and those goals may change. And in fact, those goals may be something that you would like. Some of those goals, something that you would prioritize in certain stage of career, such as, for example, those of you going for tenure, definitely you should strive for that blue profile in here. And for some of us who basically established a career, reached perhaps professor or chair position, perhaps adding yet another article on CV would make such a big difference. But engaging with interesting and large, complex firms, organizations, participating and contributing to the policy development, that's something that perhaps we could or should aspire. In my own career, I found it also very helpful to think about it, and also perhaps you could use it, for own performance development. Every organization runs some kind of performance development interviews, performance management conversations, and in preparation to that, I believe it's very useful to actually have such conversations with yourself, thinking, well, here where I am, and where do I want in the future? But most importantly, of course, why do I want to, for instance, with this visualization, prioritize research and say, okay, I'm doing that, what's expected and needed from my level in terms of societal impact. So I keep doing what I'm doing, what I have been doing, let's say, during the last year or last 2 years. But perhaps I need to increase my teaching evaluations in the classes that I teach now, without creating anything new, because I'm coming in 1 year or in 2 years for promotion, and teaching student evaluations matter. So perhaps I'll push towards this, but first and foremost, I need to prioritize research. These conversations are extremely helpful to have before you actually get to that table with your head of department or immediate supervisor. Another way to look at it is to think about where does this triangle starts, right? So in a sense, what comes first and foremost in the equation when you need to make any kind of evaluation or need to make any kind of decision, perhaps career decision, even family life decisions as well. For me personally, research always been priority. So I would kind of spin this triangle at certain, you could say, at some stages of career, from research to education, and then societal impact, which to me, I operationalize societal impact also as an executive education and direct work with the companies. In some instances, again, starting with research, but spinning it through societal impact or through the knowledge dissemination, and then bringing it back to my classrooms. But thinking, where do you start? What is your priority? I believe also quite important. Happy to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to perhaps use a couple of minutes to talk about my tripod and studying, of course, studying with research. But actually, just before going there, I also wanted to mention that this is about individual profiles. But if you think about it, this profile could be also used, or at least tripod could be also used for institutional development. Such as, for example, you can actually build a strategy house around that for any department or even business school, starting with the background, mission, vision, where we are, and then looking at these tripods that we just discussed, being research, education, societal impact, going through value statement and mission. But nevertheless, let me talk about briefly about my tripod. In the research, I'm following kind of as a motto, perhaps, this citation from colleagues saying there is nothing so theoretical as a good practice. It's definitely my field. I'm in business school. I'm professor of strategic human capital, my second theoretical leg in international business scholarship. So naturally, when you study large and complex firms and multinationals, inspiration as well as aspiration often come or should come from work with them. So in my research, I do anchor the problems, the questions that I'm interested in the paradoxes, dilemmas, tensions that large and complex firms as well as multinationals face when they work with their human capital. Furthermore, recent years moved much closer to the strategy field, thinking how can companies and organizations, including public organizations, can achieve greater value creation by managing this human capital more strategically. In terms of how to go about it, this is a kind of a picture that comes to mind when occasionally we think about our research, right? The field is developing so fast, and there are increased quote unquote competition from around the world, and to get into this top tier publications, you are again quote unquote competing with people from very different institutions, universities, business schools, country regions, and sometimes it may feel that you just constantly in the process of catching up, right? So you need to get more and more, collect more and more data, and publish yet another article, and there's to go for the funding and things like this, right? But at the same time, if you think about this doc, which is very busy, nevertheless is an incredible stable position, but maybe not stable, but static, let me say, static position. And I call it a comfort zone. Perhaps this particular doc not particularly comfortable, but nevertheless, sometimes we, look for our ideas for the next research and at the same time keep ourselves in this middle of the comfort zone that we've created by searching and reviewing articles in our own academic discipline, by talking to similar kind of organizations, by referring to particular institutional environment, and etc. But as we all know, the most interesting, most significant development is happening at the edges of the comfort zone. To get to that next big idea that you really need to do the impactful research, to create societal value, and ultimately also publish in those top tier journals with 96, 98% of rejection rate. I believe that one needs to, from time to time, I need to, from time to time, kick myself out of my own comfort zone. And to me, this comfort zone kicking could be kind of articulated through this quote. We need to push ourselves out of a comfort zone, assuming the presence of average individual in an average context. So in my search of the next big idea, I take it for granted assumptions of, for example, individual or context heterogeneity, and see how these perhaps intentionally introduced variants actually challenge some of the most established ideas in our research. Now, because we are where we are, I thought that I also should talk a little bit about the use of context, being our beautiful country, Kazakhstan. So in preparation for today, I went through my publication list and picked out publications that I used context of Kazakhstan, sometimes as empirical context, but quite often actually as a theoretical one. So I thought that I'm going to list them and tell the story, perhaps how it became relevant in my research. The reason is that when I started my PhD, I was never studying Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was neither my theoretical context nor a context for data collection. But when I was working at Copenhagen Business School, we had a visitor Kate Hutchings, who was writing a paper on, or wanted to write a paper on hybrid human resource management. And she thought that, the post-Soviet Kazakhstan offers an interesting context, empirical context. So she was a visiting scholar, visiting researcher at our institute. And during her visit, we decided to initiate this paper that later on was published in European Journal of International Management. And yes, it wasn't an intention, perhaps it was by chance, but nevertheless, I guess that's how it all started. It continued because a colleague of mine, Maral Muratbekova-Turon, who is currently working in Paris, strongly recommend to invite her for these conversations as well. Again, we kept our contact since KeyMap, and then during beginning of 2000, I still worked a lot with oil and gas industry in Kazakhstan, doing lots of exec ed around Caspian Sea region. And then Maral was saying, "Well, Dana, so much of details, and there is lots of, you could say, perhaps data that was gathered non-intentionally. Shouldn't we write it up?" And I remember I kept saying, "Maral, I don't work on Kazakhstan. I'm not regional researchers. Yes, I do international business, but it's really not about that area." Nevertheless, thanks to Maral, we published this paper in International Human Resource Management. There was an experience of Canadian and Chinese acquisitions in Kazakhstan. And that actually was also spinned further on into a case that was published in Harvard Business Review Russia, as well as teaching case that was published at the Case Center on the acquisition experience of Kazoil. By the way, that case is free in case if you're interested in the case to teach post-acquisition experiences using cultural lens or HR lens. That's I think it's an interesting story. And that conversation continued because when we were working on the previous article, but also when I was teaching that in my classroom, I wanted to explain all those informal connections and networks, but the whole literature only talked about blood in Russia or Guangxi in China. And what I just literally didn't have any context or concept to explain, that informal kind of networks and relations that we have in Kazakhstan. So we went into kind of a conceptual thinking theory development, and then we published a paper called Colonism, so kind of a labeling this indigenous management practice as well as network, and published it in a special issue of Management International Review, which is basically another way to look for outlets being very much aware of different special issues that are there on the topics. That special issue was indigenous management practice, and I just literally bumped into the editor at one of the conferences. That led further to work through Maral. I met a couple of other people, and that paper, which came up in Human Resource Management, and that's FT50 4-star journal, looked at the Russian multinationals. Kazakhstan was one of those subsidiaries that we studied. So although it was really on M&Es coming from Russia, but context helped as well. This paper, although it is not on Kazakhstan, it's a conceptual paper on the importance of context and individual heterogeneity. The quote I had on the previous slide is from that paper. But to write up this paper, again, used examples of Kazakhstan, my conversations with managers around, for example, talent management and things like this were quite helpful. That gave birth to another article that we decided to do kind of properly, meaning applying for data, for funding, and the data collection, going and collecting the data. The paper took some years to publish, and interestingly, when we presented first time at the Academy of International Business in 2013, we received the That's Interesting award, which is extremely prestigious for novel ideas and interesting research. And next day, I got rejection from Journal of International Business Studies on that paper. it was already on the submission, exactly for the same reasons as lack of novelty, lack of originality. So from there, one paper took multiple turns, ended up in Journal of Business Ethics, and introducing a communal perspective, and again, working through the notion of clanism that we introduced earlier. We didn't want to stop there, and interestingly, when we presented this paper, a researcher from Turkey reached out and said, "I'm so happy that you now introduced something else, because I'm so tired of blood and guanxi, and what we have in Turkey is something what you have in Kazakhstan, but we have different dimensions to the second kind of aspect that we introduced." We teamed up, conducted more empirical research, and published this paper in International Business Review. There was a couple of other things on the way, but actually I want to get to taking time into consideration, get to this particular paper, which is published in the Academy of Management Review, and that is journal number 1 in both business and management. There, we actually went a step further and thought if things that we learned by working with the context of Kazakhstan on clanism and relational kind of communal perspective, maybe there is something more to that. So we decided to challenge the established assumption in international business that informal institutions and formal institutions are like two sides of the same coin. And when formal institutions get stronger, they kind of get an order, and then informal institution, all those informality kind of disappears. So we actually, and I know there's some, co-researchers in this area on the call, but we actually borrowed from evolutionary biology, which operates with the concepts of mutualism, commensalism, as well as parasitism. So the established assumption in international business research that's been until we published our paper is that it's parasitism, right? So informality exists only because formal institutions are not in order. And then once we establish formal institutions, all those transitional economies in emerging countries get rid of the informality and catch up with us with the ideas of Western management. So we challenged that, and it is a theoretical paper. We actually argued that formal and informal institutions should be viewed as dependent. But actually, the reason why informal institutions persist have nothing to do with formal institution. It depends on the type of informal networks they are based on, and particularly we said that if informal networks are relatively effective and relatively closed, the degree of persistence of informal institutions will be higher than otherwise. And that, we argued, explained why 30 years after Berlin Wall collapsed, lots of former transitional economies still, informal institutions, they are doing just fine despite of the development of formal institutions. Then we actually, if you're interested in this paper, I also would recommend looking at this Global Encyclopedia of Informality edited by Leon Ledenov, which is for free, the download. But as an examples, we looked at all kind of different networks. So Kazakhstan, the context of Kazakhstan was a beginning of a wonderful journey that, to me, resulted over, of course, 20 years or so in the paper in absolute top journal in our field, where I'm now also an associate editor, which I would have not been able to become, because you can only become a E in a journal if you actually publish there. Well, at least in top tier journal. Few things around education. Here I also have a motto: there is nothing so practical as a good theory. I actually love teaching theory to our students, regardless of the level, but I will never teach it in its clean form. Rather go and look through the applicability. And again, in this situation, context matters as well. Because if you think about, we all operate in some kind of global educational system. Within that, we have differences between our national education system, and then we have business school, which are actually quite diverse because quite a few academic disciplines are there. And although you say global business school, business school could be global, and we have all those triple accreditation and lots of similarities, but there is actually quite a few differences brought by the national as well as the regional structures. But then within academic disciplines, with business school, we will have academic disciplines and different research paradigms. And then, of course, there are lots of differences in terms of the gender, age, ethnicity, religion, and think about it. Across all those cultural dimensions, we have our classrooms. So when you take something which probably was created using the assumptions of Western management theory and bring it into such wonderful, rich, contextually rich context, you will have lots of opportunities to actually be extremely practical about any kind of theory. And there is nothing more practical than a good theory. The final thing about societal impact, it is really about making a difference. It is about starting a change. And I think really particularly for professors and established scholars, it actually starts very much with yourself, where you yourself, or myself, needed to kick myself out of a comfort zone, being a professor or chair at the research institution. So I'm actually currently an intern, and I'm having an unpaid internship at the AP Maersk. It's a big multinational headquartered here in Copenhagen. This is because I'm actually formally on sabbatical from King's, have 4 months teaching free. And I didn't want to travel, or instead of spending time at another institution, which is extremely similar perhaps to what I know, I decided to spend that time in the corporate jungle of AP Maersk, where I definitely learning a lot about myself, what we got wrong in our teaching or in our research, and getting some new ideas for upcoming project. I'm also founder and director of a small consultancy firm, which is called Nordic Human Capital Advisory. Could talk about it if we have time for that. So that's basically my tripod. That's my structure. And as I said earlier, the word tripod derives from the Greek word tripos, meaning the three-footed, and refers to this three-legged structure. And I think it's this tripod could be used for sitting comfortably or standing easily, but I think we know that the form of tripod is the most stable furniture construction, particularly for uneven ground. And I would say that for us in our very uneven grounds and very dynamic context, thinking about research, education, and societal impact, not as one versus other, but as a part of a whole, may be quite helpful. I'll finish by sharing with you pictures from our research away days that were me and my colleagues engaged into the active building of three-legged stools, which we all kind of colored and created in our own way to symbolize our research, education, and societal impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dana Minbaeva, for your talk. The time just flew by. It was such a rich information podcast, and I hope our audience enjoyed it as much as we did. Now I would like to move on to a Q&A session, and I encourage everyone to write questions in the chat so we can address them. And as we have just around 15 people in the live session right now, I encourage anyone to unmute yourself and join the discussion while we wait for questions to encourage more natural discussion. And while we wait for questions, I would like to touch upon the comfort zone that you mentioned in your talk. It was interesting to learn about it, the self-driven character that you have. Do you have any key moments, maybe mentors in your career, or book, articles, research paper that inspired you? And what do you do to keep motivated and excited about your work and getting out of your comfort zone?
I think I'm always aware that standing still is is a position that can hurt you most, because that's when you're standing still and everything is changing around you, you just kind of very close to this, just sliding back, going kind of backwards. Also, so I do have a hobby. I play tennis, or at least I try to play tennis. And those of you who try that, you probably know that, first of all, it's a fascinating game. And second of all, when you stand still and you do these sudden movements, you actually injure yourself. So when playing tennis, you constantly need to be on your toes, you know, with a movement forward. And when the ball comes towards you with this enormous speed and perhaps just, you know, the opposite thing, you kind of think about the opposite thing. What you actually should do, you need to go into the ball. You need to lean forward in order to create that, you know, backspin and things like this. So that, I guess, it is about, it's really not about reaching out somewhere or, you know, high ambitions or anything like that. I think it's more about realizing that there is a huge danger of standing still. Because it's really in our field and in our life, in our situation, and I particularly would speak to our female listeners. It is really not about vertical growth and, you know, competition and pushing around. It takes a village. So I would say it is really about growth. However you define that, and never compare your insights to someone's outsides. It's really not about achieving and moving and etc. It is about, definitely about growing in the way that you defined. And regardless what helped me or pushed me, it will be something that's relevant for me, and you, Aya, you would find something else. But there were a couple of low points. You know, there were points in my life when, you know, you end up in the deepest and darkest space with your face in the mud, and the only thing you need to do is to stand up and go for the next ball, so to say, right? So if pivotal moments, yes, I remember when I graduated from Polytechnical Institute, had diploma of mining engineering, there was no jobs, going around looking for jobs, and there was just no, because nobody needed mining engineer. I even went to accounting courses, but who needed accountant without experience? So I did all kind of things, wash the floors, clean public bathroom. And that moment when you stand there and cleaning that public bathroom and you're about to throw up, that could also be a pivotal moment. And you understand that I actually don't want to do that. I want to do something else. And then it is about getting up, standing up, you know, learning from the last failure and finding that next ball. Back to the tennis
Thank you. This is
association.
actually a really beautiful analogy of playing tennis and just experiencing
May I add?
highs and
Yes.
lows of life. Being prepared for anything, just keep moving, right? We have a raised hand from
Yeah. Can I just add a quick question before we
Sure,
go?
sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Dennis, thank you so much. It's a very great example of playing tennis. I also play tennis, so hope in the future we could play. And I really understand your example, like going into the ball. It's the most important in the tennis in order to win, right? Not to have a defense. Well, in our audience, so we have, I think, many students, PhD students, maybe graduates who are in different countries, and some of them in Kazakhstan. And your life path is very interesting. And I read your story in Pravda. It was very, very exciting. And where you explain how you work hard in order to get money to pay for the tuition fees in a KIMAP, and that you learn English. I really understand. I also had similar way. So could you share maybe 3 skills or maybe qualities which helped you to reach the current professional state in one of the top universities in the world? Advice for our guests.
I think it depends where you are, right? So you say PhD students, then even you're a PhD student, it is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would have done that. So that's perseverance, right? So it's really persevere. It's such a good word that captures so many dimensions. And then, when you're a young assistant professor, you need to be extremely focused. You need to get tenure, right? And when you, it's again where you are, but it's also understanding that, as I said earlier, it takes a village. You couldn't do it by yourself. So teaming up with the right people, and also having this clear priority of why am I doing this? In the sense that why should I take this extra job, right? And I don't. Sometimes people ask me, how do you do that? You have a, I don't know, full-time job and then part-time and then consultancy and then all other things. Well, maybe because also like when you get to the tenured position and when you're becoming full prof, there's so many expectations from you, then you need to learn another skill, such as, for example, do one thing which creates more than one outcome. Look for complementarities and synergies for 2 + 2 becoming 5. If I was doing just one thing to achieve just one outcome, I wouldn't be able to do all those things, right? So you really need to think a little bit more strategically, something that we are, advise companies to do. So it's really, I'm afraid, Serek, I don't have a blueprint, but I would say it really depends where you are. But for PhD students, persevere and prioritize research, because you could do all kinds of other things, and then for young scholars as well, that your dean is asking you, or your supervisor is, no, supervisor is a different thing, but it's also interesting, and someone else invited you, and that. When it comes to the job, recruitment decisions, there will be someone else against you, and that committee member going to put your publication list against this person publication lists. And regardless how nice and giving and citizen you are, ultimately a person with a greater publication list and a more established research pipeline. I do realize for PhD students, research pipeline is much more important than publication list, but the person with a more established research pipeline will get a job, and you will just continue being a nice person who everybody could ask for a favor, right? So I'm not saying you have to, you gotta be a nice person and you gotta do the favors, but think about the priorities and understand, why am I doing that? Oh, that's because it's kind of, this helps me to establish that or create that. But publication list is the only thing that will break glass ceilings, glass walls, that the only thing that will deal with internal politics, with external networks. That's your only currency, I'm afraid. I think Uljan has a hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
A hand.
For our regular member, Oljan, please unmute yourself. Oljan, do you have any problems?
We don't hear Uljan.
If Oljan can allow mic for Oljan, that would be great. And we have one more hand from Aigerim. If we can't solve the mic problem right now, let's move on to the question from the chat. For a while, we have.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
I couldn't turn on microphone until now. So yeah.
No.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Uljan. I work as a field application engineer in electronics and integrated circuits industry in Norway. And I would like to thank Dana for interesting lecture, and especially for introducing tripod methods. Personally, I found it useful when considering career. And I would like to ask, there's no doubt there's a phenomenon of Ruşulduk in Kazakhstan. How does Ruşulduk, also known as clanism, affect economy and society in Kazakhstan? Does it have any positive sides? And how can it be used for the benefit for economy and society in Kazakhstan? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And we actually did write about Rushul Dick in this encyclopedia of informalities that I showed earlier. And my colleague and friend Maral will be a really right person to talk about it. We see Rushul Dick as something that comes more close from the, you could say, cultural roots, while colonialism is described as indigenous management practice. So in other words, how it is applied through. There are lots of positives and lots of, you could say, silver lining of that. But overall, I would say the person who works with informal institutions and informal networks, there is no such thing as good or bad. They're just different. And it's not just about, developing countries or emerging economies. They exist everywhere. They exist in, Grande École in France, all boys clubs in United Kingdom, Jantelon in Denmark, as well as Norway, for the sake, right? Or Vasta in Arab world. So it's really not about good or bad. It is there. It's part of the context. And the Western theory or Western-based management theories, at least, assumed, or let me rephrase that, they took that heterogeneity, that variance in the context out of equation when they formulated, for instance, the idea of anything to do with market-based logic, that in any situation, they would say that individuals would do things that benefit their own value maximization, right? So the so-called market-based logic, incentives that we have, individual-based bonuses that we have right now in any organization. But it actually excluded the fact that in certain institutional contexts, in certain networks or informal, certain countries and certain societies, it's really not about your immediate benefit, but to what extent people in your, and this is coming back to colonialism, in your relevant circle, which defined by you, not anybody else, but you define it, whether whatever you do could actually benefit my people, right? Because I know if it benefits my people, it will ultimately comes to me. And actually, if you think about it, right now, the most recent developments in strategy is a much more network-based. We use a lot in strategies the concept of ecosystems, platform economy and things like this. So I would say definitely the pluralism that we bring from, for example, knowledge of clanism or Vasta or what else did I mention? All other, wonderful networks, including definitely networks, for example, in Japan and Korea. They nuance this knowledge and they actually shed new lights through which we could either develop new theories or get a great understanding. And to be honest, Uljan, when I'm doing a lot of executive education program, and that's what I talk about, context, complexity, the danger of simplifying complexity, and that's what lots of Western theorists did at the time when they were producing frameworks that actually guide a lot of research that we're seeing right now.
Thank you, Uljan, for your question, and thank you, Minbaeva, for your answer. We have time for 2 more questions before we wrap up this event. Aigerim wanted to ask a question. If the mic is working, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hello, my son was on. Thank you so much for your speech. It was really interesting for me because I'm on my 4th year of doing PhD at the University of Glasgow, and I have interdisciplinary research between operations management and HR, and I'm looking at how this neoliberalization of higher education, how performance management and measurement system affects well-being of academics. So yes, and I can really happy to hear that these contextualized factors, they help to develop the theories, which I'm extending organizational control theory and adding the contextualized gender issue and also resource control into the theory of organizational control. And when right now, when I'm writing up everything, I'm writing my discussion chapter and I'm coming towards my contribution. And I'm kind of was not sure if my contribution really matters, if it is a contribution. And yeah, I just wanted to.
No, I understand what you're saying. I agree. There's a definitely, again, lots of doubts, and you look around, and everybody's so clear about that contribution, and every rejection you get from the journal is about absence of novel theoretical contribution. I'm a IE at the Academy of Management Review, and this is theory development journal, so we publish only theory. And I tell you that every single letter will have that, right? And I know how annoying that is, because what on earth that is, that contribution that you keep asking about, right? And how come that everybody got that, but not me? Again, not compare your insights to someone's outsides. I would say overall, and it doesn't matter whether you're in research, in practice, it also, if it is just about your life in general, your career, the meaning, there is lots of questions that we begin working with, and them first of all with why before what, before how, right? So really asking like why that matters, or why am I doing this research? What's the research question, right? So then you go in and you go into the details around what do we know by now, and etc. So you actually come up with your new what, and even maybe if you're an empirical researcher, go and test how it works in practice. And then comes the most interesting question: so what?
Yeah.
And it's actually not me. It's, if you go back to David Witten's 1989, I believe, editorial that basically says what constitutes a theoretical contribution, right? He talks about these questions. He talks about many more things, but that so what question, that's what it's about. And that applies to everything. For example, in my consultancy practice, I also go with why, business problem, what, solution, how do we implement it? So what? What does it mean for future development of your company? Where will you have next pain points? And so that's so what? That's putting things in a perspective. It's super important when for students I supervise. I always say to them, think about this sand glass, right? You start your research somewhere and then you narrow it down, you study it very well, and then you need to put it back into perspective, preferably as wide, if not wider than the original starting point, because that's how we do research. The most valuable thing that comes out is that so what question. And usually, because whatever we write, dissertation, paper, or whether it's project, by that time we run out of steam, time, ideas, right? And that's highly unfortunate, because that's exactly the most interesting point. How to go about it? Well, sometimes in our field, I would say turn it upside down. Can you tell the stories the other way around? Can you probably think about it. You sit down with a CHRO you admire, and you pitch your idea, your findings, your so what to this person in one slide, right? What do you want to talk about? Sometimes people say, yeah, well, pitch it to your grandmother. I mean, it's not about grandmother. It's not about dumbing it down. It's not about simplifying, right? But it is actually maybe when you kind of meet a imagine you're walking into the room where conversations are going. And within this room, being your research field, there are different groups of people talking, having different conversation. And then imagine that you're just joining conversation that are carried out by the most impactful people in your field. And why would they just stop talking and start listening to you? What is it you need to say so precise and concise that the most impactful people who are having most interesting conversations, stop talking, listen to you. and use your input to lift the conversation up. So I think there are several ways to go about it. And the third thing I would suggest, since you're in my field, define papers. So look for the 4-star journals that are relevant for your field. Find the articles that you truly admire, really like, wow, that's interesting, and it's really well written, and then reverse engineer. Why did I like this passage? How did they approach structuring the introduction? How in the discussion section they connected the empirics and the theory? So you actually take what they've done, final product, and reverse engineer. You could be more lucky if you've been reviewing for the top journal, which I strongly recommend. Find the journal you want to publish, start reviewing for that. Because if you're a reviewer and the top journals will send you original submissions, all the reviews, and author's response, as well as the editor letter. And that's why I'm saying review for the top journals, because, pardon my French, crappy journals will not do that or will not provide good review. You can actually harm yourself by reading bad reviews, right? But in the top journals, the quality of review is really good when you sit down after you participated, after you got all other communications back, then you put original article, put all reviewers' comments, put editors' comment, look what other reviewers said, how did the authors respond, and this is enormous learning opportunity. Because publishing, it's actually not publish or perish, it's publish and perish. And doing that is a skill. So we can, of course, go and lecture about it, but it is a skill. It's like, I mean, going back to Serek, it's like tennis. You know, I can watch all those videos that out there in the internet or listen to the theory session, but you gotta get out there and practice that skill, sometimes or often by failing. But hey, as Rafael Nadal said, you either win or you learn. So.
Thank you, Dana, for sharing such a practical advice, and your answers are so inspiring. It's like another podcast. To not steal your time and time of our audience, let's address one more question shortly, and we will wrap up this event. Camila asked about the context and this triangle that you may want to develop. She's a human rights lawyer and loves to work in the field work, and has a aspiration to develop in societal impact and education fields, but the job where she chooses to work requires more academia. Any one sentence advice would you recommend to balance this requirements versus aspirations?
Yeah, I guess, and again, this is because now, Camila, I don't know you, so Camila, sorry, and I kind of get what I have from your context, but nevertheless, I think it's really not about where you work right now, and that's I hope it came through in my main conversation, that tripod helped me. Oh, I needed that regardless where I work, right? Because every institution has own priorities and advantages. And, for example, now I'm in the UK educational system, that very different priorities and expectations of doing different things, right? And then who knows, maybe experience another institutional environment. In your case, yes, you are a human rights lawyer, you're working in one context right now, but then you may be working elsewhere. So I actually think figure out your own tripod, what matters for you, first and foremost. And having that as your, sorry for high word, moral compass, and that would help you, when you're going to change between environments, between contexts, between firms, when there are changes in life, and not if, but when you're going to face difficulties and issues. So these three things matters for me. Actually, to be honest, the person who first time told me, it was my father, who's also he's a professor emeritus in Almaty. But he talked about tripod being different things, and I remember one of them was family, and another one was work, and I forgot what. Well, don't want to tell what the third one was, but nevertheless. But I'm trying to say that it doesn't have to be only about work. Perhaps there is something else in your life. And maybe you don't want a tripod. Maybe you want to, I don't know, 6 ankles or different kind of figures. Maybe something else. Maybe circle works for you, right? But I guess in the context of academia, I found that what works. So I think it's more of an inspiration rather than prescription. So I would very much recommend finding what works for you.
Thank you, Dana Minbaeva. I would like to share the gratitude for joining us today, sharing this insightful talk, your personal experience, and your intention to help our audience to define their own aspirations and future directions. And I would like to thank.
Can I just say one more thing? Sorry, my voice, and my apologies for interruption. The other thing is there is lots of people from different disciplines. Interdisciplinarity is a great thing. When we talk about impact, it is really about and that, countries, context, etc., but also about interdisciplinary. And we already chatted before starting how great this gathering, this society is, and perhaps also encourage to use it to cut those interdisciplinary borders. And that applies to research, that applies to education, executive education, but also funding and other things, right? So to me, just looking on our own discipline and, that little dog on the train, could also be dangerous because you create tunnel vision. So perhaps we could also explore in the future opportunities to build those interdisciplinary bridges, because we all care about one particular context being Kazakhstan, to advance our whatever it matters, whether it's research or teaching, funding, education. My apologies for interruption.
That's actually a very important thought that you've shared. We always put the context of Kazakhstan and the professionals that in Kazakhstan and how to bridge these different environments with the rest of the world. Thank you again, Professor Minbaeva, for joining us today, and thank you for all of our audience that not only joined us today, but had a really nice discussion with our guest. And I would like to meet you again in our future events. Thank you, everyone, again, and we are wrapping up this event.
Thank you, Dana, so much. So hope to see you in our future meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, so
can I ask a question?
Yes, just a second. So maybe we need to stop a live meeting first, and then I think we could continue. Just a second, if Dana has a time. So can we ask Galumjan to stop live streaming? And then we would have we could allow you to talk if you wish. Yes.
Thank you.